lot of threat actors are doing really funny things. They're not trying to persuade you in one point or another. They are trying to throw as much as possible. It's called like the model of fire hose of falsehoods. Basically what Russians are doing, they're throwing as many different things as possible so that you could pick up like in a buffet. You're making people sanitized against any like stance because, oh, I will never know what happened in the country.
Roman has spent years inside Russia's disinformation machine, cloned news sites, manufactured migrant panics, and the leaked files that exposed it all.
Don't believe what they say on the internet. There was a cartoon in the New Yorker, like when there is a dog sitting in front of the computer and like the cat asks the dog, what are you doing on the internet? He's like, nobody knows on the internet that I'm the dog. So basically, you never know who is behind it. You never know who is this account that you're chatting is in the comment section. You've probably seen this like really bad video of Zelensky at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, like AI generated. It was so bad.
Yeah.
Now it is better. So what we have now, there is like a lot of people's testimony, like absolutely generated, like people from the streets telling that like, oh, our government is bad, we should stop the war. Or people from the front lines, again AI generated, telling that like, oh, we should stop the war because people are suffering. When they see tons of this content out there in different formats, in different forms, consistently throughout time, repeating some of the messages, they might land and influence some of the people.
The most effective moments of messaging we might think of as propaganda are those that are mixing events with messaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Roman, it's really nice to have you. We're here in Latvia for the NATO, the Stratcom Center of Excellence annual meeting that happens. Is this your first time to come?
Yes, it is. So you named the organization.
Yeah.
But the event is called Riga Stratcom Forum.
Okay, Riga Stratcom Forum. Yes, I just know it from the organization name.
Yeah.
But I had the chance to hear you a little bit today up on the stage. Very thoughtful stuff on particularly the role of automation and AI, which I hope we'll get around to. That's some of the stuff that I do on my academic side, even though we're here really to think and talk a little bit more around like what's going on in like the informational environment, actors, and what we've learned. I know you have a lot of research there. Well, I guess someplace I wanted to start was something that happened in May last year, last month.
Yeah.
In Ukraine, that there was this avalanche of messages that Ukrainians woke up to about migrants flooding Ukraine.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like, obviously kind of a bizarre thing because you don't think of migration flow to war zones. You think of migration flows away from war zones. But people were taking this as news.
Yes.
And that kind of like blending of it, like how something like based upon nothing becomes and gets uptaken as something that has the status of news. Can you walk us through that process for people, like how they got that, and maybe just tell us a little bit more about this operation?
Absolutely. So, as you probably know, Ukraine is at war with Russia, right? There's something happening.
It hasn't skipped many people's attention, but maybe some.
Yeah, but there's definitely happening, right? Like I am also spending some time in shelters from time to time, but that's the separate story. So when this happening, there is like a lot of people who became refugees out of Ukraine, as you said. A lot of people like fled Ukraine because of the like war, shelling and stuff. And we indeed have a problem of depopulation, right? That's just facts. So it's like out there, people understand that this is happening. Like you cannot avoid the truth. That's happening. So what happened in May that you touched on is that at some point we had the migrants as like top number one topic being discussed by literally everyone. There is like AI generated images, videos, people commenting
just in general.
It's like,
this is the hot topic.
There would be like hundreds of thousands of people coming from like India or Pakistan and like living in Ukraine instead of Ukrainians. They would be exempt from serving in the military, so yada, yada, yada. And like there are more people would be coming in. They even changed like some of the names of the cities like to play on the origin of people that will come here and replace Ukrainians, like in air quotes, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, like the whole of this thing is not true. There is no like upsurge of people who want to go into the war zone. Like, there is none. Like, we actually have a decline of people who want to go
Which
to
would be
Ukraine.
expected.
Yeah, it is like normal and expected, but it was so hyped up that like it was injected. And actually, we've seen at LetsData, we've seen some signals from February. Actually, then there was like first seeds of this information, and it seems that people were so receptive to this thing, then Russians decided to go all in into this thing and to pollute infospace with this stuff.
Yeah.
And it landed because it was like a painful point. This is like vulnerability in the society, because people understand there is a lot of people who left. We indeed, there is not enough like people to cover all of the like jobs and needs of the country. So there's like an understanding that something should be done. But because it plays on the instinct, like against people that somebody will come and like use whatever you have, it's like amplifying the fear of unknown, because a lot of people, to be honest, they never seen foreigners in their lives.
Yeah.
And what Russians are playing here is like twofold, right? So the first of all, this actual, indeed real thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And another one is the fear of the unknown. A lot of people, they fear what they do not know.
Yeah.
And that's the two actual things that go into this. And then in May, that's avalanche of content. And then real people, they started commenting on it because they're like afraid or like discussing it. Then like influencers made their like funny bits on top of it. They were like TikToks, Instagram Reels, whatever. And it became just a part of the like overall information landscape almost immediately. So like the whole May, like maybe from May 5th till May 19th.
Can you quantify that? Like how much of the information?
I cannot say like the exact number because I don't remember it on the top of my head, but they were like, I would say maybe a few videos that like reach like millions of views. Some others like
So it's
hundreds
hard
of
to
thousands.
avoid when you log
Yeah,
into.
it's basically so hard to avoid that like mainstream, like real media, like public broadcaster and some other medias had to publish an explainers that it is not happening. The interviews with people who like studied demographics for their like life.
Yeah.
And they explained that this is not happening, guys. That's not real. This is just like hysteria that was manufactured, but still it works.
But like, were they susceptible to this migrant narrative in particular? I mean, there is like the fear of the unknown. There's a lot of things that are unknown.
Absolutely.
And but is there something we've seen this happen in the UK around elections? Obviously, it was a big part of the 2024 election cycle in the US.
Yeah.
Can you speculate on something, I guess more generally, about migration as this topic that can like provide this wedge? And like, what is it about this topic?
So again, I would get back to the fear of the unknown, because most of the people, even in the US, they never seen foreigners. They never interacted with them. Like if you think about this, people who live in college towns, like, and where the huge universities are based, they definitely been there. I was this student in one of the like campuses in the United States on my Fulbright. So I was the foreigner there.
Yeah.
But how many people like I spoke to that lived in this city outside of my like academia circle? Not that many, if you think about this. And I think that's truthful, because it's something of unknown to you. So a lot of the like disinformation could be directed that way, because there might be some things associated with something that you do not know, something horrendous, even really bad things associated with it, which are not true, to be honest, right? And that's why it kind of works, because again, people are afraid of it. Maybe there is something else involved into it. Like, I'm not sociologist, unfortunately. Like, I'm not serving people for life. Like, I do not know. Maybe there's some other explanation. But from my understanding, it's this not understanding the thing and just going after the moral panic in a way, even though it's not happening.
Yeah. I mean, I've often thought that the way that migration has come into our contemporary discourse is something that was like a spoiling effect of a nation, and a nation being thought of as a, kind of a genetic group, genetically similar group of people. Obviously, hugely mythologized concepts of what a nation is. But this migration thing just has contested these like senses that are very like intuitive for a lot of people. And there's a lot of diverse actors in these information spaces. So you can't ever like identify just like one sole actor.
No.
But I do think this insight, whether it was just intuitive or whether it was some explicit piece of knowledge from places like Russia, they kind of felt like this was something that could like actually drive a wedge.
Yeah.
And was there something that you would look at Ukraine and think Ukrainians were particularly susceptible to this?
I would just like recalled one thing that I wanted to point out.
Yeah,
like
sure.
a psychological thing is like us versus them.
Yeah.
So in that way, you effectively do the people already there as us.
Yeah.
So you're like kind of making them one whole, as you said, right?
Yeah.
Like as a nation, like mythologizing Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You got the gist.
Yeah, we got mythologizing.
Mythologizing, yes. Thank you very much. So yeah, and making it like as a whole group against something else, again, unknown thing.
Yeah.
Answering your question about Ukraine, why it hit so hard. Well, the war brings a lot of the problems, and like there is not so many happy things that's happening. Let's be honest. And this like maybe it just feels like another problem that is like bringing to your attention some like unfairness of life. Let's say that some people will come and get something for free, kind of like it's weirdly sound.
Well, people are suffering, right? They've been there for all these 4 years and been bombed. Their apartment's been bombed. Their heating's, on and off all winter long. And like if someone's just going to come in and take this, you could see this would be like terribly destabilizing for people who probably aren't. This is huge speculation, very irresponsible, but like might not have the best mental health at this point after being in a war zone for this long, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, let's leave it for the like professionals, like psychologists. They know definitely better. But yeah, I mean, people are like tired.
Yeah.
So that's just like another thing that you need to handle, and a lot of people are perceiving this like as a way to vent off and like on the social media. So that's why we know about this, and that's why a lot of people felt for it. It's not necessarily because it's something about Ukrainians. It's rather being resilient for too long.
Yeah.
Let's leave it as this. I wouldn't say that this was like predominantly extremely like viral and people done something with it, but it's just like it was this specific wedge that, like, as you said, was particular for the UK, US, European countries. It works everywhere because, again, us versus them, it creates this pretty effectively. What Russians are also doing, like, not with the migrant, but not with migrants specifically, but with the government. They try to disassociate the government from the people and also create this thing, like, so the government is like, it's not us and we should hate on the government. And that also works because it like exploits the same tactics basically, right? Like we are in group and we are rightful and they are not right, they're not, and we should not perceive them. They are like kind of opposing us. So that's what they are doing, but because it felt on this real fertile ground, that's why it in a way worked.
Well, it's something that kind of reminds me of something I think you've written on, was around the stuff with how people are now believing things or taking things on vibes.
Yeah.
The question isn't for a lot of people, is it true? But does it like feel true?
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things that like perhaps this is a case in point that, and what it means to feel true is unclear. It's not like it feels true just because I saw a bunch of people. It might just feel true because it's just a part of the unfairness of my life. Yeah, of course this would be happening. But to say a little bit more about this distinction that you have, and it's kind of like this epistemic crisis that isn't only in Ukraine.
It's basically everywhere.
Huge part in the US.
It is, right? Like, so first things first, we cannot touch on the whole world. It's like too complex. We cannot understand it in full. So we like take some shortcuts, some heuristics, and it could be anything out there. So like we read some particular sources, or like we trust these sources and not trust these ones, and that's how we build our like mental map of the world and our understanding. The problem was that a lot of people formed already understanding of how the world works.
Yeah.
And if something goes against it, it's like confirmation bias. Like There's like a lot of research into that. They are like kind of trying to avoid not to be in this cognitive dissonance state when you need to reassess what you believe in and trust. That's why you try to avoid this painful information that contradicts you. So that's why people are, when they perceive something that like feels like it's in line with their understanding of something, they would like tend to believe it more. So for instance, I've seen indeed the thing when people are writing, this is an AI generated, you should not trust this video because it's like basically synthetic, right? People coming into the comments, real people, like real verified people on the social media and saying, I do not care, he or she tells the truth. So whatever like AI avatar was generated, because it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, it tells the truth, like this video tells the truth. Okay, but it was generated, crafted specifically for you in the message. So how would you even justify that you are believing into this thing? And for many people, it actually doesn't matter if it like sinks.
Well, this is something that we've seen in the US, whether it's going to be foreign influence operations or domestic ones within our information environment, that when you ask people, they don't actually care what the source is. They care how well it converges or affirms their priors. And that's the basis on which they are like receiving and incorporating this information into, we might call it a worldview. But like, how then does a change of viewpoint happen?
Well, you need to be open to change your viewpoint. It's like, I would say there is, sorry that we're getting back to this, but you know about this small startup company called Cambridge Analytica? Yeah. So
it's funny that we're still talking about Cambridge Analytica.
Because it was like so groundbreaking at the moment. So they use this thing, it's like ocean framework, how to basically measure different like psychological traits of people. And one of them was like openness to new things and stuff. So this one kind of scale explains whether you're open to like new experience, information, yada yada. So I would say this is on the personal psychological level. Basically, are you open to change your viewpoint? Or like that could be translated into, do you believe that you might be wrong? This is really important experience for everyone and like shows humility if you understand that you can change your opinion and it's totally normal. But in our world, when there is like tons of different information and there is like, it's so quick and you need to like make decisions instantaneously, a lot of people do not allow themselves to be on the, I do not know, or like, I don't have an opinion on that. Everybody should have an opinion on everything.
So one of the most difficult things I have taught my whole career at the university, and this is kind of like my main thing in my life as a faculty member, is that sometimes students come in without any clarity of what they actually believe. And this kind of reminds me of this old saying that one of my professors, graduate school professors, would say about the role of clarity in the intellectual life, that it was like, as humility is to the moral life, like you actually have to be open to correction, clarity is to the intellectual life, that you actually have to be able to clarify what you think before someone can actually correct you. And I actually wonder if we have this huge crisis of lack of clarity, that people are just so intuitional about all of this, and that they actually don't know what they believe, and such that it just kind of like is this free association all the time. And you get this in students as well, who are just kind of like feeling their way in this topic, and you're kind of asking, is like, well, what do you think this author is trying to say? What do you think about this piece of evidence? Is this piece of evidence persuasive in this? And they don't really know, because you kind of have to like address that from some clarity.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's absolutely a valid point. I would say there is like a thing called like informational cascade. So let's say it would be Pete, right? You and I, we both know Pete, and he's very opinionated about thing X, right? We don't have any stakes on this thing, but he is our friend. So we're like kind of okay with his beliefs, and like also maybe tending to believe into the stuff that he knows. Then there is our like friend, let's say, I don't know, Clara or whatever, like
Mm.
she knows us but doesn't know Pete, right?
Yeah.
She looks at us and sees that we're like kind of okay and vibing with this topic because we're not like necessarily opposing what our friend Pete is saying. So now she's also thinking that the majority, like she knows another two people who are
Yeah.
like okay with this idea, and then this cascade goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And indeed, as you said, a lot of people were looking for like some social evidence that could come from family, social media, like amount of likes, for instance, or the popularity of content.
Yeah.
And as you said, if people do not have a clarity of what they believe in, absolutely, they could just go with the wave and vibe and like feel that like they should believe in X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and I think we underestimate that it's actually hard to change a mind when the mind isn't made. And if there's just this lack of clarity what they think, I mean, you could change it maybe, but often you're changing some surface level aspect of it. You might be changing some articulation of it.
Uh-huh.
You might be, changing, but what you're going to have a harder thing to do is change like their senses of belonging. And I do think that is that's I see that in students as well, is that they are adapting viewpoints as a way of trying to understand where they land socially.
Yeah.
In their class, in their year in school, things like that. And such like they're trying on viewpoints. And I guess increasingly, particularly at Filter Labs, as we've done this work, globally, not just in like the Russia-Ukraine context, but China and elsewhere, is that we just have like an awful lot of grown-ups out there doing this as well, like just trying on viewpoints.
The thing is, like, the current information landscape and a lot of threat actors are doing really funny things. They're not trying to persuade you in one point or another because it would be seem pervasive.
Yeah.
But they are trying to throw as much as possible. It's called like the model of fire hose of falsehoods.
Yeah.
Basically, what Russians are doing, they're throwing as many different things as possible so that you could pick up like in a buffet,
Yeah.
basically. But it makes this clarity harder.
Yeah.
Because indeed, like young people, they need to try maybe some of the viewpoints to understand what's like closer to them, what they should be doing in life, etc. But it becomes increasingly harder when you like go through all of this noise that's being created. But this is like part of the tactic because you're making people sanitized against like taking any like stance because I will never know what happened in the country or like there, or some horrible event happened. There are too many viewpoints. We will never know what happened,
The
even though there is like
nihilism,
bunch of evidence on one side and basically some wipe only kind of proof from the other. We will never know what happened.
Yeah, it is interesting how that kind of like, epistemic nihilism can like seep in and just be kind of this. And, I guess in the context of teaching university students, this is when, they might get a stern talking to about like, that's just lazy. That's not what we're trying to do here. Well, one of the tactics, you were just like mentioned this, that you've written on in a report that you did with the DFRLab at the Atlantic Council was on these doppelganger sites.
Yeah.
And I guess kind of wondering like what role is that playing here within this the epistemic context we've been speaking about here? And what is the objective that these doppelganger sites were trying to achieve? And that because they did replicate a lot of the same content.
Yeah.
And that's why they were considered a doppelganger. But obviously there were key articles that were different and things like that. But explain a little bit for those who are watching and listening to us what these doppelganger sites are, where they emerged from, but also like what the people who planted them and the organizations were trying to achieve.
All right, let's start from the doppelganger, but the whole story is like, as it always, a bit more complicated than just the doppelganger. Because doppelganger is one of the tactics in the like toolbox of the guys that are doing it. So the doppelganger is an operation when you basically scroll your, let's say, Facebook, and then you see an ad that telling something outrageous or like criticizing the government or something, and there is a link Or you scroll, let's say, your Twitter or X, and you see the comment and the preview of some political leader and a link to some random website. So what will happen when you click? It will check whether you are within the target audience by your IP address. So let's say if the company is targeting the United States, for instance, it will check whether your IP address is from, I don't know, Florida or like New York, and not like, let's say, Paris, France. So when it checks and everything like looks good, then it will launch you to the website that will look like a copy of the Washington Post or like Fox News. They would look exactly the same, like exact copy. So that's why doppelganger name.
Yeah.
There would be even like the journalist link, and all of the materials would be clickable on this website.
Yeah.
But whenever you click, you end up in actual like Fox News or actual Washington Post. However, the article written there and the imagery used in this article were never at the official either Fox News or Washington Post. So basically, they copied the view of the website, injected their article imagery, and presented as like the journalist of this media wrote about this. So this is the tactic to actually steal credibility of those media and people in a way. They usually register the websites like it would be Washington Post, not .com, but like .pm or .io or whatever.
Yeah.
So it will look extremely similar, especially if you look from your like smartphone. It would be hard to distinguish.
Because you don't see the whole URL.
Yeah. It would be like
you just see Washington Po or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of works. However, we know so much about this operation, not because because of the operation itself. There's like a lot of technical reports. There's a lot of like narrative-wide reports. Some of them like I written, but like there were at least few dozens of them that were written by fantastic like governmental, non-governmental organizations in Europe, US, everywhere. Basically, everyone were into this. However, there were leaks of internal documents of two organizations called SDA, Social Design Agency, and a group of companies, Struktura. Let's leave it as Struktura, aka Structure in English. They were published in a few materials in real Washington Post. There were like leaks of the documents that were intercepted by European intelligence. However, the world seen more by US Department of Justice publication of the affidavit in September 2024. There's like just a massive addendum of like internal Russian files, how they actually lay out their campaigns, what kind of like content quotas on what platforms, how many comments there should be written in a month. There is also screenshots of dashboards where they measure how well their content lands and receive views. There is also like analytical capabilities of this organization. So they serve as like all in, let's say, advertisement company. They like do an analysis of the wedges in the societies. They are producing the content like in a really industrial way, like with hundreds of images and thousands of comments per day in multiple platforms. And they measure how well it landed. And also, which is not the last, they collect mentions in Western media as a proof of the success to sell
of their
campaigns,
of their like doppelganger sites or
of doppelganger sites, of videos, of comments on social media,
all of it,
of all of it, to present it themselves better because they're connected with Kremlin, and to get more money from Kremlin and tell them that we are successful. They're collecting all of this reporting and showing like, hey, we are present. Look at that. We are like really important and doing important work. So doppelganger is just a part of things. It's really interesting tactic, and that's why a lot of like organization investigated it, because it was kind of novel.
And I think this is an interesting point, that it's easy for us to forget. And I know it's like a researcher in like your seat, it's hard for you to forget, but is that these things that we focus on, this doppelganger thing, are embedded in a multi-pronged strategy often, and they're much more like complicated. And we often like focus on the novel bit, but there's a lot of other pieces going. And I guess in what you've seen and what you've been studying, are there like new as like people in marketing will say like best practices and things like that, like how you're supposed to post online and where you put the video link? We have our amazing team that does a lot of this at Filter Labs, for Filter Labs. They know all this stuff, and some of it just kind of like seems like voodoo magic to me. But
Fair.
there are like they have some evidence to suggest like, are there like things about how you put together these big complicated beasts of coordinated campaigns, at doppelgangers, social media, press conferences, events, and things like that? Are there now like strategies out there?
I think it is the strategy in itself. They have, so Russians have like military documents of how to self-defend in the information space, let's say. There are like multiple of documents because according to Russian documents...
But calling it self-defense is just a wonderful
they
campaign itself.
They never, like, they do not even have like offensive in their like vocabulary. They are like, they have counter campaigns. So even this people
they don't
who
have
are like
offensive in there.
Yes, there's like counter campaign. They are like protecting by attacking the West.
Yeah.
This is just like how it works. So like this overall thing, like the whole internal documents of SDA and Struktura, as for me, this is a validation of the strategy, how it looks not in the like this doctrinal documents or like we will be protecting our informational integrity. That's basically what informational integrity looks like for Russians. It's like we are producing 300,000 comments per month. We are producing like a few hundred TikTok videos, like discrediting this and that. These are the topics that we should focus in Ukraine. These are the topics that we should focus in France. These are the topics that we should focus around elections in the US.
Yeah.
That's their basic information integrity for you.
I guess it's just, from our vantage point, it might just look like a total offensive strategy. And something that came up at this NATO event that I spoke at in Athens, the big NATO Communicators Conference, was like a major theme that emerged on the panel I was on was about what does defense actually look like in this space? And it was hard not to conclude that it looked a little bit like offense. You know, we're kind of like rightly skeptical, cynical of Moscow, Putin's, you know, kind of self-defense, kind of justifications for and having no stated offensive posture in the informational space. We're rightly skeptical of that, but really what would defense, like an actual effective defense, look like if it didn't take on some form of offensive characteristic?
That's a great question. I would say like we have multiple things, and unfortunately there is no single solution because the problem is complex, right? As we said, it's like some people are just like epistemically lazy. They do not want to involve like much time into understanding who they are and what they believe in, like for real.
They're just trying to answer the question, how do I belong?
Yeah. Or they just like asking ChatGPT, like, tell me what I should believe in. I'm kidding, but like, probably not that much.
I bet there's a lot of people who do say that.
So, we can do the things that we are already doing. So like the media literacy courses, fantastic thing. Should we be doing this? Yes. When it will bring us results? In few decades. Is it enough? Absolutely no. We have an issue right here and right now. Plus, there is no guarantee that people who went through the courses would be fantastic at this thing and will not be protecting their hold beliefs and trying to disprove real information because they felt the vibe check with the information that is untrue. There is no guarantee for that. Second of all, we can do debunking. A lot of people think that debunking is like bad thing. We should not be doing it. It's ineffective. Spoiler alert, we should be doing it because if we're not contesting what's being injected by the threat actors, what's the point then? Like it will be just so much noise that is not contested. It's super weird. We should do the debunking so at least the LLM, when like, you know, doing the prompt, like will get some response that it was debunked. Pre-bunking, we should explain people tactics, how the disinformation works. But again, in itself, it won't work because you are pre-bunking against some of the tactics, but what if the tactics will change tomorrow? With an LLMs, the world is changing like every day and like a couple of weeks for sure.
Well, there's certainly better and worse debunking. And there's certainly, and there's pre-bunking that can just accelerate a narrative or like just kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So the final thing here, like these things are essential. So we've done a report with Jakub Kolensky, my colleague, where we interviewed people in Ukraine who are like countering disinformation in Ukraine, like about the lessons. So these things are basics and they should not be neglected. So this is like on the protective side of things. As you said, offense could be in a way that we should punish the actors. It's like, again, getting Jakub's lingua, because he has 4 lines of defense, like document, explain, and then punish the threat actors, meaning like sanctions, meaning making their life harder. So like if they register in, I don't know, new domains, so do something as Department of Justice done. They seize their domains. Of course, Russians register them within a day, but this is painful because those sanctioned entities and a lot of like domain registrars will not be registering those domains from those companies. So it's making their life harder. And that's the thing. You cannot totally win. Like it's probably impossible because there's always would be some way around. But like you need to make it harder for the adversaries to make their operations.
What strikes me as something that's, I guess, one of the issues that I worry about most is the cognitive load that individuals are now taking on right now. And it's that we have maybe hostile actors in an information space, and then we have pre-bunking, debunking, we have all this other stuff that people are always on. And I know this is something you've talked about as well, as there's just been like no downtime.
Yeah.
For like, when does the cognitive battle begin and end? It's this 24/7 thing. It's literally a lot of us, especially when I'm traveling, my iPhone's right next to, because it's my alarm clock. So I don't have to figure out how to like set the alarm clock at the hotel. It's there. And it's like the moment I'm awake, it's like broadcasting to me. And like, I guess, what does normal feel like right now?
If I could ask you the same question, I don't know.
Yeah.
For every other person, it would be different things.
Yeah.
So like, let's say there are like people who are not using technology as much, and what seems normal for them will not be normal for the person who wakes up and the first thing that he or she does is like reading the whole feed of the news and like what happened in the last 12 hours or whatever, like when you were asleep. So there is no such thing as norm. I think we're slowly moving towards this like heavily individualized feeds. We are already kind of are, right? Because of the pages that you subscribe to in like social media, the channels on YouTube, like podcasts that you listen, they are kind of in a way unique mix that like only you have, right? Maybe there are a few thousand other people that have similar mix, but maybe not exactly the same as yours. And in the future, AI would be more here, and we would be getting like even more customized thing. Like, so there would be not like 5,000 people receiving something exactly similar, but 5.
Well, it'll go from targeting a generally written content to a specific user to actually developing content for that is unique to that user.
Yeah.
But like, that is also to take a fairly narrow view of what's going on in the cognitive domain. Is like, what is like, we use the word discursive to kind of talk about this, like what is like the discourse out there in the realm. But there's also all these events. And it does seem as though the most effective moments of messaging we might think of as propaganda are those that are mixing events with messaging. I think it was a mill blogger from Russia. They were kind of seeding this propaganda on Ukraine was about to attack nuclear power plants. At the same time that there was an IAEA inspection. And such that there was this event here that wasn't like, it wasn't like newsworthy to most people. And this message could make an event newsworthy all of a sudden and like frame it. And that the message itself doesn't necessarily land, but the message paired with this event that they can point to does. And, I guess to some extent we have to recognize that there's pretty creative, like, kind of efforts going on to try to like pair these events together. And obviously Ukraine does it too, to a great effect in Russia. Kind of bombing a power plant such that smoke is going to float over, a Putin speech. Why are those more effective than just
the message?
Just like spewing the world with messages?
Because we still live in physical world, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is important. I mean, you could tell whatever you want, but when you see the smoke coming from, it was not power plant. It was like the ship, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, this is the one,
The
but
one in
recently,
St.
like
Petersburg. Yeah, yeah,
just like 2 days ago or
yeah, yeah.
something.
This
Yeah, yeah.
one. It
So it
was
was a ship that
it
they
was a ship.
bombed in the.
Yeah, it is effective because people see this. They cannot not see it. They cannot see some of the messages. They cannot hear some of the messages, right? But this is something in the physical world that you cannot ignore in a
Yeah.
way. So that's why it's been amplified by being this like emboldenment in the real world, like this mic. You could see it, like you could touch it. It's the real object, right?
Yeah.
But then we could like talk about, I know, the whole day long about some discourse and stuff that's like you cannot touch it. It's
Yeah.
not tangible. This is something different. It's just like requires you to go and actually think about this, conceptualize. It's harder. Some things that are tangible, they're like easier to process for our minds because we were wired that way, right? Like because our mind is pretty ancient thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not wired. It wasn't wired for this like tens of thousands publications on your social media feed. It was
Yeah.
like more of the things that like you need to survive out there in the nature. So that's probably why. And touching on what Russians are doing in information space, there's a tactic called information alibi. So before they want to do something, they launch an information campaign. Like, let's say they would be bombarding, like, I don't know, the center of decision making, whatever it is. Then they hit the, I don't know, the children's hospital or whatever. And after that, they all tell, yeah, but they were combatants there, or like there were never children in this hospital. We said that we were like aiming for the decision making center. We hit the decision making center. So they're preparing informationally to shift the blame, or like say that they are an innocent, or like they are targeting combatants where in reality they are not.
Yeah. We only have a few more minutes here, but I definitely wanted to, because of some of the conversation I heard you having on a panel this morning, was about the role of AI
Mhm.
right now, or auto-generated content. Um, and what in this whole, like, whether it's on the detection side about trying to track patterns, or even the content production side about how to, and then deployment of the messages, what is AI particularly excelling at right now?
Multiple things. So AI is, I mean, for the production of the content, it's been used. So, first of all, again, from the internal documents, they need to produce hundreds of images and memes per day. Like,
Yeah.
so you could give it to the machine and it could generate it for you in seconds. You don't need like people like illustrators. So the people who do these cartoons, you could just generate them, and the imagery for your publications on social
And it's
media.
good enough.
It's good enough.
It doesn't need
People
to be
are,
perfect. There'll
yeah,
be mistakes in it, but
yeah, absolutely. They do
yeah,
not care that much. It's just like it should be at least distinctively like touching the topic that they are like would be
yeah,
commenting on or whatever. That's the first thing. Second of all, AI is pretty good at automating some things, and most likely the creation of the accounts is done by the AI.
yeah,
That's the second thing. The third thing is like generation of the videos. I mean, before you probably seen this like really bad video of Zelensky at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, like AI generated. It was so bad.
yeah,
Now it is better. So what we have now, there is like a lot of people's testimony, like absolutely generated, like people from the streets telling that like, oh, our government is bad, we should stop the war. Or people from the front lines, again, AI generated, telling that like, oh, we should stop the war because people are suffering. Or they are generating people in our legislative, like Verkhovna Rada, it's like parliament, and telling that like, yeah, we should fight even more and like attack some like another country or stuff.
yeah,
So this is absolutely ridiculous on the surface level, but like when they see tons of this content out there in different formats, in different forms, consistently throughout time, repeating some of the messages, they might land and influence some of the people. So the AI helps to actually scale up the old strategy and approaches that Russians had for decades, if not like maybe a century, because it started from way back in Soviet times, like active measures kind of things. They're still here. However, the form, technological advancement helped like to scale up the speed, scale, or like number of items that you could produce per hour just through the roof.
Well, it strikes me definitely like, and this is kind of something a lot of people have said, but I think it's very true for this sector, is that AI is very good at scaling out existing capabilities.
Yes.
It's not very good at bringing online new capabilities at this point. And like that newness still seems to be like coming out of like really well-trained analysts.
Yeah.
And like that, bringing something new matters tremendously in this space.
Yeah.
And such that if you're going to be at the forefront of this, you can't just think about scaling what was done. You're going to have to, because novelty is the thing that breaks through.
Yeah. So the AI in like LLMs and everything is like statistical models, first of all, right? They are trying to average what's like, so basically LLM is trying to predict the next word in the sequence, right?
The next token prediction machine.
Yes. And this is like statistically next token that like statistically like the most probable, the next one.
Yeah.
It means that like it will regress to like normality, or like how the machine sees like what should be the next one. So in that way, like the novelty is possible if you lead this in one way or another. So like you could find something novel if you analyze huge, vast, like majority like of the data, like swath of data. But without your input on the like this creative idea of some approach, it will probably not do this without you. So like there should still be an analyst, as you said, the person who understands where to go, where to look at. So like for the monitoring, you could use it, fantastic. For summarization, fantastic, good. For the production of assets, nice. But for this like breakthroughs and something new, like novel tactics, you still need people to think about this and then give it to AI to deploy.
So our final question, we always ask people, if you had one message you could put on a billboard that billions of people would be able to see, what would it be?
That's nice. It should be short, right?
It's got to fit on a billboard.
Yeah. The short answer: be skeptical. The longer like tagline underneath is that don't believe what they say on the internet. Because there was like,
that seems to be a safe message.
Yeah, it's like an old saying. There was like a cartoon in the New Yorker, like when there is a dog sitting in front of the computer, and like the cat asks the dog, "What are you doing on the internet?" He's like, "Nobody knows on the internet that I'm the dog." So basically, you never know who is behind it. You never know who is this account that you're chatting is in the comment section. You never know who where this content was produced, what was the idea behind this content, whether it was done by adversary or not. So that's why you should be skeptical where you're taking the information from, whether it's something that you trust. And it's even more important with the chatbots and LLMs, because if you go and do like, tell me a digest of the most important news from the like last 24 hours, check what's went there and what sources where it was using, because it might be a really interesting mix that you would never think about.
Well, that's a good place to end on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.